Welcome to the Focus Fundraiser, where we discuss how to focus on the right fundraising practices, because doing more shouldn't be the goal. Doing what matters most should be. And I am excited to introduce our guest today, Kel Haney. She is a seasoned fundraising consultant who has made more than 20,000 fundraising phone calls and has helped nonprofits raise over $16 million. So she knows what she's talking about. Kel joins me. We're going to discuss mid-level donors, end of year fundraising, how to reduce burnout, and how to rethink how you talk to your supporters. So Kel, welcome. Can you start the time off with sharing a bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. So I come to fundraising. I think most of us fell into this in some way, shape, or form. And so for me, I was a theater director and I was living in New York City. And it won't come to a surprise to anyone who is watching, listening, but theater directors, especially emerging, quote unquote, emerging ones, don't make much money. So I needed to do something to support myself in New York City while I was directing. And luckily, I worked for a theater I loved, a theater that I had decided to stay with past the original 3 months of my internship, and years later was still working there, because I read a play that I thought should win the Pulitzer, I thought should move to Broadway, and I couldn't imagine leaving New York with that play happening. And that play, this is now over 20 years ago, Rob, was John Patrick Shanley's play Doubt. And it did indeed win the Tony, and it did indeed
Mm.
win the Pulitzer as well. So I started fundraising for Manhattan Theater Club because it's what I loved. So I was on the phone every night calling people either to encourage them to come see Doubt or because they'd already seen Doubt and I wanted them to come see more shows at that particular theater. So I know it sounds crazy, the 20,000 phone calls. Frankly, it's probably maybe closer to 40, but that just felt so egregious. So I was like, let's just say it's 20. I never really counted, but I definitely have my 20,000 hours over the phone. I have that. And I got really good really fast. And I didn't have a background in sales or in fundraising, but I was talking about my favorite thing. So I personally raised approximately $6 million over the phone in less than 6 years. And it was mostly in contributed revenue, usually $2,000 or under, and also some earned revenue, which was subscription packages. But I've since then reverse engineered why I was able to do that and do that so successfully. And that's what my firm is based on. It's based on both training and coaching internal teams about how to use the phone better, and also setting up not for profit with what I call outbound fundraising rooms, which are then artists making these calls. So really
Mm.
excited about that.
Very cool. Well, let's dive into some advice that you can give, not only just on phone calls, but you're a big proponent of mid-level donors, I believe.
Absolutely.
And that's something that at DonorDock, we talk a lot about, of the importance of it. And you
Rad.
hear so much about major donors, you hear so much about recurring donors, but
I know.
actually segmenting and defining your mid-level donors, I think, is
Mhm.
so impactful that so many orgs can benefit from it. So let's talk about that. How do you approach mid-level donors? Why are they important? How do you define them?
Mhm. Okay. So it's always the first question anybody asks me is what is the definition of mid-level donors? My friend Brooke Ritchie Babbage has like a very specific calculation that I'm sure I could get her to share with us. I try to keep it even more simple than that for the most part. It tends to be donations that are a 4-digit donation. So 1,000 to right under 10,000. For particular orgs, it might be a little bit lower than 1,000. It might be a little higher than 10,000, but it sits in about that place. And so what I like to say is that mid-level needs their own strategy. And that's what I'm seeing most not-for-profits lacking right now is, to your point, is that most not-for-profits understand there is a long-term stewardship, collaboration, relationship building that needs to happen with major gifts that could take months, if not years, to cultivate. And also grassroots. We're doing so well in our sector right now in terms of monthly giving, in terms of grassroots gifts, in terms of how we can segment emails and get really as specific as possible with our, bulk communication. But mid-level needs something else. So that's where these phone calls come in. So what I do is I coach and I train on a 5-minute phone call. And people say to me, well, Kel, is it stewardship or is it solicitation? And what I want to encourage us to is to get out of that binary and realize that a really well crafted 5-minute phone call can be both of those things. And both of those things, depending, Rob, on what's happening with the donor and where their comfort level is. And so to me, I'm really aware that we're always trying to find what is everybody's good stretch. And I just never want it to be that someone is donating to an organization. It's just one more thing they're checking off their list in the day. Like, I want that gift to always be coming from an intentional place and an intentional and like explored in this moment, as opposed to just something that I always do. I mean, I find that that leads to longer term engagement. And again, my work is really based in this idea that it's about the forest that is the long term relationship with a community member, as opposed to the tree of, well, what happens in this particular interaction? In my case, this particular phone call. It's about the longer term relationship that we're continuing to craft.
I love that. Can we
Yay.
can we talk about let's talk about that
Okay.
stewardship
Sure.
in the end of year context,
Mhm.
because end of year is such a major chunk of fundraisers' funds that they're raising.
Yep.
But to your point, how do we keep that in context of the forest and not just look at end of year as
Mhm.
this ask, 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 but making sure that we're segmenting and we're focusing correct?
Okay. Well, so we're where we are. I think it's important for us to all realize, as of today, it's October 21st. We're looking at an additional, I think it's 11, 12 weeks left in the calendar year. So we can't always look back. I think that is the easiest thing to do, is to look back and be like, oh, I wish I had done X, Y, and Z to this point. It's done. We're where we are. So one thing I really recommend is that end of year is a habit, It's a ritual that the majority of your community members already has going in areas of their life, whether or not it's giving to you or not. So I think the people who are already giving and who are already engaged with your organization that are warmer connections, why not reach out to them in this moment? They're already thinking about giving. They're already thinking about year end. They're already thinking about Giving Tuesday. So this is the moment to warm up connections you already have. So I really think it's important for us to adjust our expectations. So I don't recommend, especially for smaller orgs, but frankly, for any size org, that year end is the moment to really think you're going to get this whole new wave of new donors. Your best donor, your best new donor is that person who's already with you, or that person who has lapsed their engagement in the last year or two. They already have the habit. That habit just needs to be re-engaged. So that's really where I recommend we start. I also recommend, I'm actually getting ready. I'm launching a group program, a pick up the phone for year end group program. I'm limiting it to 10 organizations, but this is like exactly what we're talking about in this program I'm going to have starting next month. But yeah, it really is a moment to get very strategic and to figure out what your bandwidth is. So to, with your larger, and I know we'll get into it, idea of always keeping burnout at the forefront of our minds. That's always at the forefront of my mind. So we need to always be realistic with our expectations. So I recommend, first and foremost, looking back to what was raised in November and December last year and the year before, figure out what those numbers look like. Is that in alignment of what we need to do for this December? Chances are you're probably looking at 10 to 20% of an increase, just because that's what organizations like to just give, is an immediate 10 to 20% increase every year. So is that realistic? How far are you away from that? The other thing I want to say is that matches are magic. So this is the moment of year where I really recommend reaching out, looking at what you have already in terms of foundation giving that could potentially be used towards capacity building, and set that up as a one-to-one match for year end. Okay. This is also a good moment to reach out to board members, to other major gift donors. That I just find every org I work with has one or two or five donors that they're always biting their nails. Is that gift going to come in by 12/31 or isn't it? What if you reach out to them right now and you say, I would love to earmark your $10,000 gift towards our phone campaign that we're going to do for Giving Tuesday and beyond in December. Can we get that pledge from you? Can we get that gift from you for 10,000, for 15,000, for 20,000, and be able to earmark that specifically towards your end? What I love about that is that that connects donors of all sizes, increments, to each other within your org, because then you've got your major gifts person really invested in the grassroots, in the mid-level, and the mid-level, the grassroots person who inevitably sometimes will apologize and say, I'm so sorry, this isn't more, to be able to say, this is wonderful, thank you so much for your contribution. Also in this moment, we get to count it as part of the match. So if you can look at how much money you're trying to raise in mid-level and in grassroots for year end, and if you can match that with a match or for multiple people for your major gifts, It's a really good place to start. And if you can do that, what I would really love if I can wave my magic wand is to do a one-to-one match for year end in general, and to do a 2-to-1 match that's specific for Giving Tuesday. And if possible, make that available starting the Monday before, just to kind of rev up. That week of Thanksgiving is a hard fundraising week. I think everyone should take the time off that they would like to, if they would like to, but it really is a moment that you can start that momentum. So those are like my quickest tips about how to get in for year end.
I think we should just end the podcast right here because those are so great.
Boom.
But let's dive into Giving Tuesday.
Yes, please.
Give me your hot take on Giving Tuesday. Some
Okay.
people love it. Some people hate it. Some organizations put a lot of their chips on the table for this one day. Is it worth it? What are you seeing?
Okay, I'm seeing that it's worth it, but I'm seeing it's worth it that you need to be both very strategic and very realistic about what's actually worth it for your organization. So yes, I mean, what I love is if you already have a strong email cadence, lean into that email cadence. If you can go ahead and segment out as people donate so they're not getting multiple emails on the day if they've already given, set all of that up. If you can get your email cadence really well in touch. I think fundraisers should be on the phone all day on Giving Tuesday, and I think they should make it fun. I think it's here. I think it's here to stay. I definitely used to exist in a world where, before we had Giving Tuesday, where as far as at least arts and culture, it wasn't a huge time of year to be making active asks, was December, and now it's huge. So I think lean into the ritual, lean into the habit that already exists, but be strategic about it. So have your list of folks that you know you're going to call on Giving Tuesday. And frankly, it's okay to reach out to them now. So if you've got some folks that you know you want to warm up for year end, I've got multiple. I feel so bad for all the not-for-profits who are doing events right now. I have so many clients who have events between mid-October and mid-November. And so I'm so call those people now, invite them to the event, see if they're going to come. Also let them know that you are going to have a match for Giving Tuesday and for year end, and so that you will be checking in then. So it really
That's
is
good.
about, so it's about just being hey, we're going to be revving up for this time. But again, Giving Tuesday you are remiss. I think we are really missing an opportunity if this is not a moment that you are calling your usual suspects, people who already have a habit of giving this time of year, whether you are a very small organization or you're a large organization. It's a day to call, see what happens.
Yep.
Last year, I had someone say over the phone to one of my clients, I am getting emails all day and I'm hitting delete, 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 but I'm not going to hang up on you. I'm so glad that an actual human is calling. So it's also some counter programming to what's happening if you actually pick up the phone for Giving Tuesday.
That's so good. I think something that I'm hearing under all of this is data. You need to be able to segment. You need to be able to have your email connected to your CRM so that you can segment and tell them who they are and how much they've given. And if they've given, not send them another request. All of that requires a solid CRM backbone. Is that right?
100%. I mean, it's so funny because I think people who gravitate towards using the phone, people who are in leadership, who are all about human to human, person to person connections, and that's me, tend to think oh, who cares about the tech side? That's boring. That's cold. That's impersonal. And it's so the opposite. Having all of, as you know, having all of the tech in place, having a very, very clean, healthy CRM hygiene is the best thing we can do to have the strongest one-on-one connections that we can. So yeah, I mean, it's so important, and it's just hard because what I do and what I coach and what I train on is an immediate ROI. So the clients I work with, basically, I want them to be able to see at least a 2x return on investment within the first month of us working together. It's not uncommon for that return on investment to be more to 4 or 7%. And you can see that immediately because we have humans talking to humans on the call and raising money. But what you're not seeing is all of that back end work that isn't an immediate ROI, but that is frankly even more just as important, I would say, as actually making the connection, is having it all and having, your email connect, like you said, to your CRM. You just want all of that connection at your fingertips because either people don't remember at all what they've done with your organization and they have so much gratitude that when you call and say, Rob, I so appreciate, like, thank you so much. You did that $1,500 gift this time last year. I know that was an increase from the 750 you've done the last 4 years. So appreciate that. You're like, oh, thank you for reminding me. Or you're somebody that remembers everything, in which case you feel very seen and heard and validated that somebody else also has all of that data right in front of them.
Yeah. And that data, if you're doing it correctly, can help you know who to reach out to with a phone call because that's their preferred, or a text message or an email, or you can see that they haven't opened your last 10 emails. So a phone call would be better. And
Yep,
so then for
totally.
organizations that maybe don't have the capacity to call every donor potential, they can segment that down into those that are most important to call and email the
Exactly.
ones that might open their emails and be okay with that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd
Uh,
recommend, oh, just one really quick thing. Voicemails are amazing. Like, they're truly
mm,
akin to a handwritten note. So even on Giving Tuesday, leaving a voicemail with a specific numerical amount of your ask, let them know what your goal is for Giving Tuesday, let them know the match, let them know how far away you are in that moment. Okay, so leave the voicemail with all of that pertinent information. Say, I'm sorry, I'm leaving you a lengthy voicemail. I'm also going to drop this in an email. So even if they are getting emails on that day, like a personalized email for a specific numerical ask is fine. I will tell you, I have a client last year that did that on Giving Tuesday. Called a client, called a community member who was a former donor, who their background was a $5,000 gift, hadn't given in 2 years. Asked that person on the voicemail for 7.5 and said, we're trying to raise $18,000 on Giving Tuesday. Voicemail with an email. Didn't hear anything. Crickets. A $18,000 check showed up the first week of January from that person. It was amazing. Well, again, it's just like it was an $18,000 voicemail, and it was because that person was just specific, in their ask. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier the 5-minute phone call
Mhm.
ask. Can you break that down for those that are probably very curious to or nervous to pick up the phone and they don't have a solid script? I'm assuming that's what this framework is.
You got it. Well, so here's the deal. I think that scripts are for actors. I think they're not for fundraisers. And the idea of the 5-minute fundraising ask is that you think about it as, I want you to think about this phone call as a tent, and not the kind that you take camping, or, yeah, not the kind you take camping, but the kind that you might have a reunion under, or a graduation party, or in my case, a more DIY than expected wedding off the coast of Portland, Maine. So you're calling them under this tent, and they can go whenever they please. We can move the tent. It can be about different topics, but that's like inviting them into our community. Tent, what holds up a tent is 4 tent poles. So I have 4 moments that I recommend that you reach on this call. And like, this is the background of my training, but the like very simplistic version of this is tent pole number 1 is the opening. This is the first 15 seconds. This is basically how you keep somebody on the phone with you and realize you're a human who works directly for this organization. You are not a telemarketer. You are not a scammer. You are not AI. Okay. And then number 2 is tempo number 2 is the main event. And this is when we are calling the community member further into our org. We're telling them what we're doing, telling them what our impact is at the moment. We're also sharing that we're fundraising right now, because fundraising, I think, should just be part of what we're sharing out. This shouldn't be some weird, icky thing that happens on the side. It's part of the larger community building. So that's temple number 2. Temple number 3 is the actual ask. And I just want to be clear, the temple number 3 is the ask. Temple number 2 is the main event. Those are separate. The ask is not the main event on this
Mhm.
call. The calling the community member further into the org, educating them, inspiring them, connecting with them, that's the core, not the ask. Ask is number 3. Ask should be a specific numerical amount. Okay. So much else is obviously involved in that ask, but that is the crux of it. And then temple number 4 is the wrap up. So this is when we're sharing gratitude to the person, whether they do a gift with us or not. Obviously, it's a great moment, Rob, for CRM cleanup, whether they're giving or not, is to make sure we've got the accurate email address, make sure we've got the accurate address, make sure their partner's name is spelled correctly. We all know that is something that comes up more often than we'd think. Make sure you've got all of the accurate contact info, and that the CRM is cleaned up like that. And then the big thing is that we're going to let them know when they're going to hear from our organization again, whether they give or not. And that might be an email, that might be that you're going to call them again in 3 months, 6 months, like, but let them know when they're going to hear for your own accountability as an organization, but for them to also know that it's not just a thank you, treating you like an ATM and talk to you again in a year.
Right. I love
Yeah.
that. I think the next steps call out is such a huge piece that many orgs miss. And it's as a personal donor, the nonprofits that I support, I want to know if I'm going to hear from them once a year, once a quarter. I'm going to get
Yes.
emails. What is it? But
Yes.
something to know
Totally.
that I'm part of their community. I'm part of the storytelling. So
Absolutely.
that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's shift a little bit. And I'd like to open the floor to a little bit of a wider topic, the fundraising landscape today. We continue to hear statistics around donor retention continuing to fall, less donors, but bigger donors, giving is overall falling. What is your
Mhm.
take, Kel, on where our sector is at today?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about overhead and the vilification of overhead. And
Mm,
I think a lot about how, and again, this is coming from someone, I own my own small business and I really work hard to make sure that the people who work for me and with me are all compensated equitably and accurately. And I think that there's so much scarcity that is rampant within our sector in a larger sense. And that starts with how everyone's compensated. So again, I am a for-profit business that collaborates with not-for-profits. So it's different. But I also feel like part of what I'm doing is showing that it's about creating a culture in a larger sense and that we just continue to fall deeper and deeper, I feel like, into this whole of vilifying the idea that there's overhead and the idea that people are compensated and to say, no, you're creating a whole ecosystem. Like when you make a donation to an organization, like, yes, it's about the actual cause, the actual problem, the actual art, whatever that is that we're creating or that we're working to solve. But it's also the ecosystem of who's around that and who are we employing and what are we all creating together that makes jobs for people to be able to do the thing that they really love and support something they're really passionate about. So I think about that a lot of just,
mm,
and that's connected to the burnout and, just how much turnover there is with the clients that I'm working with. So I think about that a lot. I will say all of my clients are doing quite well. Like all of their individual giving numbers continue to increase.
awesome.
It's definitely, I think it really is a moment that we have to really realize that we need to keep figuring out how do we double down on the technology so that we can really get the human time to be spent connecting with other humans. And I think what I love about my work so much, yay, what I love so much about the work that like my firm is doing is this idea that we're creating micro connections. And in this moment where I am, my work is based out of New York City. I'm reaching you from a small island in Maine right now where unless I am traveling for work, I may only see my husband, my dog, and other neighbors with their dogs. That might be all I see in a whole week in actual life. But what I love is that we're building these micro connections. So even though we're showing up and our coffee is ready for us, we're not even engaging with a barista or we're checking out our own groceries. I really like that we're continuing to find a way to like keep humans connecting to humans. And what I see is that the more we can find ways to encourage everyone who works in the not for profit sector. By the way, I actually think phone calls should be made by everybody but fundraisers. So that's like a whole other conversation we could have a different day. But the more that we're encouraging actual human connection around causes that we're both passionate about, that's what makes more fundraising happening. And so I think we need to just keep doubling down on the humanity and using the tech to support the humans getting to human together.
Yeah. That is so powerful. That's something that we strongly believe too, which is the technology. AI is only as good as the base component in the equation, right?
Correct.
If you take the humanity out of it, doesn't matter how much you automate, it's still going to be zero. But
Yep, totally.
if you treat it as a multiplier to human interactions, that's where tech can be a supporter and make sure that you're talking to them with the right channel, or that you know how much they gave, and so you're having an intelligent conversation. That's huge. I love that. That's a great point. All right. Last question. I'm going to call this the tactical takeaway from Kel.
Yes.
What is the most important action every fundraiser should do today?
I think you're gonna guess my answer. You should pick up the phone. That one donor, that check that came in 2 months ago for $10,000 out of nowhere, that you were like, I don't know why this person gave. And instead of spending 10, 15 minutes in your weekly meeting trying to guess why this happened, call that person, say thank you, say also, I'm so embarrassed. We have no record of you in our CRM. I have no idea why you gave, Rob, and I am so excited you're here, and I am so curious to find out why. Call them. Or that donor that keeps ghosting you, and you're sitting there and you're going to send yet another email, and you feel like Sisyphus just like pushing that boulder up the mountain. How about you put down your keyboard, you pick up the phone, and you call that person and say, Rob, we are missing you around here. I know I've sent you a whole bunch of emails. Sorry for clogging up your email. I just want to, number one, make sure you're doing okay, human to human, but also wanted to see we're getting a head start on our end of year giving campaign. We're trying to raise $100,000 by December 31st. You were technically up for renewal of your $2,000 gift in September 1st. We'd love to have you back. Call them. I would
Man,
be
that
so
is so good.
curious. Yeah, if anybody listening, if you are inspired to pick up the phone today, like please like reach out over LinkedIn. I'm on it all the time. Rob and I would love to hear. I would love to know if you pick up the phone and what happens today. Like truly magic happens, but we have to be vulnerable. It is vulnerable and it's scary to pick up the phone. And that's the way we actually make magic happen.
That is so good. All right, that is a fantastic bomb to drop right before we end. So Kel,
Great.
thank you so much for your insight and your advice that you gave freely today. I think we covered some really solid topics, and hopefully that those listening or watching can go back to their workday and have tactical, actionable ideas to raise more awareness and funds, especially if they pick up the phone and call somebody today. So I love that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
And if you're curious about how DonorDock can help you find clarity and build a stronger donor base, please visit us at DonorDock.com, and we will see you next week.